The table was set the way Carol always set it. Good dishes, pot roast. The candles she bought on clearance 6 years ago that I kept using because I couldn't think of a reason not to. Everything exactly right. Everything slightly wrong. Diane laughed at something Marcus said before he finished saying it. Thomas checked his phone during grace, saw me notice, looked away. My grandson Connor was asking me about the woodworking project, the only person at that table looking at me directly. I answered him. Smiled at the right times, passed the rolls. Said the pot roast turned out well, it had. Nobody disagreed. I didn't know yet that my son-in-law had spent 2 years turning my family against me. Didn't know I'd been walking into a house with a slow leak for 8 months, thinking the smell was just me. Before I get into what I found out, and what I did about it, if this is your kind of story, hit subscribe on Familix's Revenge. Takes 2 seconds. Means I can keep sharing. Now, let me tell you how it unraveled. My name is Ray Caldwell. I was a school principal for 17 years, a teacher for 20, one before that. 38 years of talking to parents who didn't want to hear hard things. Students who thought rules were suggestions. School board members who'd never spent a day in a classroom. You learn to choose words carefully in that job. You learn that the way you say something matters almost as much as what you're saying. I retired at 65. My wife Carol died at 66. Pancreatic cancer. 8 weeks from diagnosis to gone. That was 3 years ago, and I still reach for 2 coffee mugs every morning before I remember. Put one back. Make the coffee. Drink it alone, at the kitchen table where we used to sit and argue about nothing, whose turn to call the plumber, whether the neighbor's tree was technically our problem. I give anything for one more argument about that tree. I have 2 kids. Thomas is 44, my son Connor's father, works in logistics. Decent man who I've never quite figured out how to talk to easily. Diane is 41, my daughter, sharper than she knows, married Marcus Webb 3 years ago, about 4 months after her mother died. I liked Marcus at first. He remembered everybody's drink orders. He complimented the pot roast like he meant it. He called me Ray, not Diane's dad, which I appreciated. For 8 months before that Thanksgiving dinner, I'd been trying to fix something I couldn't name. Family dinners felt different, a half degree off, like a door that used to swing easy now catching on the frame. I assumed it was grief. Mine, theirs, the whole family still adjusting. So I made myself smaller, quieter. Stopped offering opinions unless someone asked. Told myself I was evolving. My oldest friend Harold told me I seemed smaller lately. I told him I was fine. I wasn't fine. I was disappearing one careful Sunday dinner at a time, and I thought it was my own fault. It wasn't. Thanksgiving. Connor pulled me out to the back porch after dinner. Everyone else inside, football on, somebody laughing at something. Cold enough to see breath. He had his phone out and his hands weren't quite steady. He said, "Grandpa, I don't know if this is anything, but I think it's something." Then he pressed play. Marcus's voice came through the speaker. Tinny small, the way voices sound on phone recordings. Clear enough. The old man's getting worse. Diane's finally starting to see it. I think by spring she'll be ready to have a real conversation about his living situation. Connor said he'd recorded it 2 days ago on instinct. Didn't know what to do with it. Almost deleted it 3 times. I asked him to play it again. He did. I stood there listening to my son-in-law discuss my future like I was a problem being managed. My jaw set. That was all. No dramatic response, no moment of collapse. Just a door closing somewhere inside, not slamming, just clicking shut. I told Connor to send me the file and not say a word to anyone. Then I went back inside and ate pie, and talked to my grandchildren for 2 hours like nothing had happened. Connor watched me from across the room the whole time. I could feel it. 2 days later, I drove to Diane's house. No recording, no documentation. Just my word and my certainty, which I believed was enough. It wasn't close to enough. She listened. Then, Dad, I think you're having a hard time since Mom died, and I think you're looking for reasons to not like Marcus. I said the worst thing I could have said. I said, I raised you better than this. Her face closed like a shutter. She asked me to leave. I sat in her driveway for 11 minutes. Then I drove home and said one word in the car, alone, to no one. A word I hadn't used in 20 years. Then drove the rest of the way in silence. I finally called Harold 3 weeks after Diane shut the door. Drove to his house, sat at his kitchen table, and laid it all out. Harold is 67 years old and has approximately 0 patience for self-pity. He let me talk without interrupting, which is unusual for him. When I finished, he drank his coffee. Then, So you went to her with nothing and expected her to choose you over her husband. That's not strategy, Ray. That's ego. I didn't argue. He wasn't wrong. What do you actually have? I laid it out, one recording. Connor's memory of things he'd half noticed over a year. Harold nodded slowly. So start there. Connor was back in Chicago by then, architecture school second year. I called and told him I needed his help with something. He said he'd been waiting for me to call. He'd already started writing things down, a typed list, 8 incidents over the past 14 months. Marcus at the 4th of July cookout, leaning toward Thomas. Your dad doesn't give you enough credit, man. Never did. Marcus to Diane after last Christmas, quiet in the kitchen. Your dad wasn't really present tonight, was he? I worry about him. Each one small, each one explainable. Together they made a shape I recognized from 38 years in schools, a patient, deliberate campaign. I read the list twice and said, he's been working a long time. Connor said, I should have told you sooner. I told him, he was telling me now. That was enough. There was a fumble. Connor sent the document to his university email instead of mine. Wrong address, auto-filled. 20 minutes of panic before he confirmed it was a private account Marcus had no access to. My heart was going faster than I'd like to admit for a retired man with a doctor who already has opinions about my blood pressure. I tried Thomas next. Lunch, a diner near his office, my suggestion. I was careful, no accusations, just the idea that Marcus might have been shaping things. Thomas looked at me across the table with an expression I recognized. Tired. Patient in a way that wasn't kind. Dad, this is exactly what I mean. Everything becomes about you. He said he loved me the way people do when they mean it, and are done with the conversation at the same time. I drove home knowing 2 things. Marcus had found a wound in Thomas that existed long before Marcus arrived, and I wasn't getting justice through a lunch conversation. Harold's lawyer friend gave me 15 minutes on the phone that evening. The recording proved nothing legally actionable. Documentation was hearsay. You'd need a confession or corroboration. He said pleasantly, like this was useful. I thanked him and hung up, sat in the stillness of the kitchen. Then, all right, it has to be the family. Christmas was 5 weeks away. The plan came together at Harold's kitchen table, which is where most of my better decisions have happened, and also a few of my worse ones. Every December 26th I host the family Christmas gathering. Tradition going back to when Thomas and Diane were small, back when Carol would spend 3 days beforehand reorganizing the pantry. I'd kept it going after she died. Didn't know what else to do with December 26th. This year I'd use it. The idea was straightforward and uncomfortable in equal measure. Midway through dinner I would perform a confused episode, lose my train of thought, seem disoriented, let the table grow concerned. Harold would play the worried old friend. Connor would sit near Marcus and Diane, phone ready. The goal: give Marcus a moment where he believed he was winning, where he'd say out loud what he'd been saying in private for 2 years. Harold thought it would work. He also said it was beneath me. I told him I was 68 years old and tired, and I wanted my family back, and sometimes the path back to dignity runs through something undignified. He didn't argue, just asked if I'd invited him to Christmas yet. I told him I was getting to that. The part that sat badly, and still does, was the grandchildren. The younger ones, 8 and 10, who genuinely love me, and would genuinely be frightened watching their grandfather seem confused at his own dinner table. I planned to pull them aside the next morning, explain it was a grown-up thing. I'm not sure that fully covers it. I did it anyway. 3 days before Christmas, Connor called. Voice tight in a way I recognized. He sounds like Thomas when he's trying not to show something. His father had called him, asked if Connor was okay, said Ray had seemed off lately. Marcus had been working Thomas. Thomas was now gently working Connor. And Connor was 3 days from sitting at my table with his phone, and suddenly wasn't sure he could do it. What if Mom doesn't leave him, Grandpa? What if what if it breaks everything? I didn't reassure him falsely. It might break some things. I won't lie to you. Long silence on the line. But it's already broken, Connor. We're just deciding whether to keep pretending it isn't. He stayed in. The conversation put a crack in my certainty that I didn't mention to anyone. Diane called 2 weeks before Christmas. Not about any of it, just to check in. We talked about Carol for 20 minutes, a memory of a Thanksgiving that went badly wrong and Carol fixed by making pancakes at midnight. I laughed. Actually laughed, first time in weeks. When I hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen and looked at Carol's photograph on the counter. Almost called Diane back. Almost told her to forget the whole thing. Went to bed instead. Christmas Eve I set the table alone. Counted seats, 10 people. Connor on my right. Harold directly across from Marcus. Then I sat and read for an hour. The way I always do before the family arrives. The real me before the performance. Turned the page, everyone came. Thomas and Sandra, Connor, Diane and Marcus, Harold. 2 younger grandchildren. My cousin Ruth, who drives 4 hours every year and never stays long enough. I cooked the same meal I always cook. Marcus arrived with a bottle of wine he'd clearly researched and complimented the centerpiece, which was just candles, which I'd had for 6 years, which he'd complimented before. I noticed, said nothing. Dinner went well, which was the point. I was warm, present. Told a story about a student from my 3rd year teaching that made Ruth laugh until she cried. Marcus seemed slightly off balance by it. I think he'd expected the diminished version of me. He relaxed as the meal went on. By the main course he was comfortable. That was what I needed. Midway through dinner I set down my fork and lost my train of thought mid-sentence. A story about the school district, a date I couldn't remember. Harold leaned in, brow creased. The younger grandchildren looked at me with wide eyes. That part I didn't enjoy. The table got that particular stillness that falls when something feels wrong. Diane watched me with the expression Marcus had been cultivating in her for 2 years. I excused myself to get water. From the kitchen doorway I heard Marcus's voice. Low, leaning toward Diane. This is what I've been talking about. You need to think about what comes next for him. Connor heard it too. I could see it in how he went still, and then I watched him fumble with his phone for a moment, fingers uncertain, before he got the recording function running. Nearly missed it. Didn't. I walked back to the table, sat down, hands flat on the surface, the confusion gone from my face entirely. I heard that, Marcus. The table went a different kind of still. I laid it out without raising my voice. 8 months of dinners where something was wrong and I blamed myself. Connor's phone came out. But Marcus moved fast. Ray, I'm genuinely worried about you. This kind of thinking honestly. And Thomas, God help him, said quietly, Dad, maybe we should. And for about 30 seconds the room tilted wrong. Diane's eyes went between us. I saw her wavering. I kept going. Connor pressed play. Marcus's voice through the speaker, the whole table hearing it. The room changed. Marcus tried once more. That's not what that sentence doesn't mean. And Connor said. I was 2 feet away. I know what I heard. Diane had gone very still, not looking at Marcus, not looking at me, looking at the table. Then, like she was saying it to herself more than anyone, Marcus, just stop. He stood, got his coat, reached for Diane's arm. She didn't move. The front door opened and closed. Sandra took both younger grandchildren from the table without a word. Harold began stacking plates. Connor put his hand briefly on my shoulder, then went to help. Thomas stayed, looking at the printed list in front of him. Not looking up. I noticed his jaw was tight. Couldn't tell if it was shame or something else. Still can't. After everyone left, Thomas stayed. We washed dishes together for 20 minutes without speaking. Not awkward exactly. Just 2 people who've never been good at saying the right thing. Standing in the familiar way of people who share blood. And not much else that's easy. Before he put on his coat he stopped in the doorway. I should have asked you directly. Not an apology, the closest he'd get. I looked at him and nodded once. He left. We'll be okay, Thomas and I. Just not the way we were. I'm not sure we ever were. Diane called New Year's Eve 11 at night. She apologized fully, clearly no qualifications. She and Marcus were in counseling. Didn't know what the marriage looked like in a year. Asked if I could be patient with her while she figured it out. I said yes. She said, I kept thinking, how did I not see it? And then I realized I did see some of it. I just let him explain it away. I said, he's good at that. Long pause. I'm sorry, Dad. I said, I know. Not, it's okay. Because it wasn't. But I know. That's enough. Connor called the following week from Chicago. Asked if I was all right. I told him I would be. Meant it, Sunday morning, early January. I set the table out of habit, 2 plates, stopped. Looked at the second one. Put it back. Made coffee, sat down with 1 cup. The Sunday paper. Snow coming down slow outside the window. The house was easy in a way it hadn't been in months. Not empty, just mine. Carol would have fixed all of it in an afternoon. She always could. I used to tell her that was her worst quality. I drank my coffee. Turned a page. It was enough.